Adults follow paths. Children explore. Adults are content to walk the same way hundreds of times or thousands. Perhaps it never occurs to adults to step off the paths, to creep beneath rhododendrons, to find the spaces between fences. I was a child. I would slip down the hill and over the rusting metal fence that bordered the lane. It's a very personal, very odd little book. It definitely was my attempt to try and talk about the huge gulfs between childhood and adulthood, and the places that they are very, very similar, and then those places where, from a child's point of view, you might as well be living on a different planet.
Neil Gaiman's new one starts with a suicide. Then there's adultery, child abuse, white witches, and even devil birds. To quote Liberace in the new film about him, it's got everything except a fire at the orphanage. Gaiman wrote the story as a present for his wife. That's nice, I think.
I thought I will write her a short story, and it'll be a short story that's about what it was like to look out through my eyes when I was 7. The family won't quite be my family. The events obviously will be invented, but I'll recreate that landscape that no longer really exists.
Mom? What are you doing here in the middle of the night?
You're just in time for supper, dear.
You may already be familiar with Gaiman's rather dark children's books. Coraline was turned into a film.
I'm your other mother, silly. Now go tell your other father that supper's ready.
As was Stardust, one of the writer's fantasy stories. If you like this kind of thing, then this is the kind of thing you'll like. But don't take our word for it. Here's a Hollywood producer.
He's probably the greatest fantasy writer living, in my opinion, and I think, like all great fantasy, his novels transcend genre. Whatever. So let's just put it this way. He's one of the greatest writers living, period. And he's an original voice in a very unoriginal world.
I love talking about the world that I'm in. I love talking about the world that I'm observing. But I always find it much more interesting if I can just turn it a little way and show it to people from a slightly different angle. On the one hand, we are tremendously sophisticated, and we have our iPhones, and we have our BlackBerries. And on the other hand, we don't know how they work. And if you actually told me that, the people at Apple have finally come clean, and it is elves that make my Apple Mac work, I would be going, oh, well, I thought it was elves.
It'd be good if it was elves.
It would, at least until they go on strike.
There's something I didn't get to say to you.
Doctor Who. He hasn't been on Newsnight for days.
Goodbye.
Neil Gaiman has written a couple of episodes.
It's so very, very nice to meet you.
I was incredibly happy with my first episode. Doctor's Wife, I felt like I got, 95, 96, 97% of what I wanted to happen. The new one...
You weren't trying to bring sex into the world of the Doctor.
I think sex is always in the world of the Doctor. It's just properly repressed.
Properly repressed?
Properly repressed, enough to give you dramatic tension all the time.
It keeps threatening to bubble over now, doesn't it? People are writing about it all the time, which is part of your legacy, I put it to you.
I think that's a perfectly decent legacy to leave behind.
Some of my highly trained colleagues on Newsnight are almost literally bursting with excitement to hear about your Sandman comic.
You say I have no power. Perhaps you speak truly, but you say that dreams have no power here.
I'm delighted to hear they are whittling themselves back in the...
They are whittling themselves, and I will quote you back to them.
Ask yourselves, all of you.
Sandman was Gaiman's twist on the legend of Morpheus. Now, this programme's meaningless if it doesn't bring its audience scoops about niche graphic fiction. Sandman's coming back.
I take my leave of hell.
It is a 6-issue prequel to Sandman, and it was one story that was left over when I finished the whole thing.
Children's books. Anyone can do them, it seems, or at least celebrities and now even footballers. Frank Lampard He was quoted in The Guardian the other day as saying, "I hope one day to be able to write the whole thing myself."
Everybody thinks they can write a children's book. Anybody who has ever had to tell their kid a story at night and have their kid go, "Oh, Dad, your stories are better than anybody else's stories," thinks, I can write children's books. And every editor of children's books in the world is terrified that a successful adult novelist is going to send over their children's book because normally they're going to be terrible.
Gaiman has turned his boyhood daydreaming into a successful career, and he understands that in uncertain times, fantasy offers its own soothing rules.
In a world in which there are very few certainties, technology, economic uncertainty, all sorts of things that seemed very set in stone 50 years ago, 100 years ago, even 25 years ago, now seem very in flux. And I think fantasy, some kinds of fantasy, can definitely give you a world in which things seem more certain.